Well, firstly, I would like to thank everyone for joining our session today. Today, we have with us the team from TrapX, and our solution today is called TrapX Security. It's a deception grid or deception technology solution. Now, my name is Ashik Thomas. I'm the product manager from Bulwark and for TrapX solution. With us today, we have Midhun and Tony from the TrapX team who will go through us with the presentation as a demo for the solution as well. So thank you all for joining. Now, quickly with the agenda, the first point is basically what we're going to talk about is why deception, an introduction into deception technology, and also the benefits. We will talk about the references that we have so far, and then we will go into a technical demonstration on what deception and how it looks like from in a real-time perspective. And finally, what we'll do is we'll actually go into TrapX Flex, which is an industry-first solution that has been presented by TrapX, and of course, our team will go through it as well. And finally, we'll have a quick Q&A to the session too. Now, before the Q&A part, of course, our chat window is always open. So please do place your questions in the chat window, and our panelists, both Nathan and Tony, will take care of the questions at the end of our presentation. And also at the end of our presentation, also once you exit, there is a feedback form that we would like all of you to fill as well, so that we can make sure that our presentations are better, not just for our session today, but also for the future sessions that we take care. Now, before I move into TrapX, a little bit about where I'm from. So the company that I represent is Bulwark Technologies. We are an award-winning cybersecurity brand in the region. We started operations in 1999 and have successfully completed 20 years. We represent about 22 plus vendors in the region, and of course, TrapX being one of our favorites. We operate in TCC as well as in India as well. We are proud to say that we have over 500 plus partners across the region. Now with TrapX, of course, our partnership started in 2019. We have a dedicated sales team, technical, and a marketing team for the same. So now I would like to hand it over to Tony from the TrapX team to take you through the rest of the session. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Ashik, and good afternoon, everyone. So I just wanted to talk about why deception. Firstly, deception technology automates the creation of traps. Some people call them decoys or lures, which are mixed among and within existing IT resources to provide a layer of protection to stop attackers and to allow us to remove attackers from the network. The traps are effectively IT assets that are either real licensed operating systems or emulations. So what is it that these technologies do? Well, there's two things, and this is one going to be discussed as part of the case studies, but what I think you'll really enjoy, as we know from the agenda today, is Nathan's going to show you this in action. So the first thing we do is we improve visibility. There's a number of tools that are out in the cyber world, and a number of them are point solutions. So therefore, with deception can be deployed across the entire estate. It can replicate all of the IT assets. So whether it's the solutions that we have out of the box, or with TrapX First around our custom capability, we can create a trap to replicate any part of the network, the cloud environment, the endpoints, and therefore we're able to disperse across the entire network. So we give that visibility. But with that visibility, we also give an early warning. So with many of the tools that are in the marketplace at the moment, they're working on big data. So they're working on AI and analyzing the amount of data, and that is creating a huge volume of false positives. But with deception, it's very binary. If, for example, we create a Swift emulated trap that's in a financial services environment, or whether it's a medical device, or whether it's a piece of OT equipment in an oil environment, then as soon as that trap is touched, once we've whitelisted and taken out all the activity that's on the network, if that trap is then touched, it creates the high fidelity alert. And that's the one thing that deception is able to provide for our customers. But why TrapX? Well, I touched on emulations. That's one of the things that we have as unique to our solution, and we can create any device on a customer network. But we also know we're unmatched in terms of the volume that we can deploy, but also how quickly we can do that. And we'll touch on that as part of the demonstration. We have least complexity in the dissection market because of our agentless solution. And we also have a very low infrastructure cost. Essentially, you just need TSOC, which is the management platform, and you need an appliance. And within a couple of hours, you can have a customer up and running. And then finally, as I touched on this, our unique is the ability to create any device that the customer has on their network. So that's why TrapX. But as you're our partner community, we want you to be able to sell the solution. So what's in it for you? Firstly, we have a deal registration process, and Ashik will share that separately. We have very good margin. We have a very quick POC process, and our success rate between myself and Nathan has been 80%. So 4 out of the 5 opportunities that we have got to proof of concept, we've been able to close on a consistent basis. So that means it's effectively good value for you to get behind the solution. And then finally, the fourth piece, we've introduced an incentive. Ashik will share this separately. For those who want to be part of the TrapX partnership, reach out after this presentation. We'll share the details of what that incentive is. Essentially, it's going to be around getting POCs live, because obviously, as we know, we'll convert those. And we're putting some money behind that to help you do that as well. So let's talk about some of the references, as the agenda said. Bill and Costas, who you can see at the bottom here. Bill runs the Security Operations Center, and Costas is the CISO for Procter & Gamble. So one of the largest deployments in deception, over 200 sites, effectively both in the IT environment and the OT environment. And both Bill and Costas are very positive in terms of what the value of the solution is. You can see these are actually quotes that Bill has provided. Now, if after this presentation you were to click on the link, there's a YouTube link there at the top of the slide. I've taken these quotes from the reference, but there's many more in that recorded session. It's Bill, a customer, talking about the challenges that they had, why deception was the right solution, and more importantly, why TrapX was the right solution. And we also have some collateral that Nathan's just shown there on the right-hand side. And again, that can be shared after the presentation. But we've got many more case studies. This is healthcare. And again, that crossed both the IT environment and the OT environment. And really, it was about the speed, the visibility, and the high fidelity alerts that we provided. But if we move on to, we've got many customers, and we've got customers across all verticals. We've got some really interesting and exciting use cases. So how deception is integrated with things like Cisco, with Forescout, with McAfee, with Checkpoint. The broad ecosystem of our solution is very comprehensive, but some of the use cases we can build are around the customers and their environments, but we'd love to do that as part of the trial. So next slide, please. For any of you who want some more proof points around deception, there's many analysts who've got behind deception as a technology. I think Gartner are probably the most recognized, and these two analysts, Gorka and Rajpreet, did a very interesting report last year around how to improve your threat detection with deception. I think some of the key findings, the ones that highlight are the most interesting for me, is that, you know, with a lot of the traditional tools, the defender has to be right 100% of the time, but the attacker just has to be right once. And that's the case with a lot of the traditional tools that are out in the market, and that's why we're still seeing organizations being penetrated. But with deception, this turns the model on its head. Now the attacker has to be right 100% of the time, because they don't know whether it's a real SAP server or a trap, whether it's a real Swift server or a trap, or a real VPN device or a networking device or a Windows server. So the beauty is the defender doesn't have to be right 100% of the time. It's the attacker that has to, and that's where the model is really turned on its head. And that's where I think customers see the unique value. Next slide. But TrapX has won some great awards. The one I'm showing on the left is a number of CISOs. They praised the solution for its innovation, its ease of use, and its importance to the business. SC Magazine did a really deep dive on version 6.3, and we got 5 out of 5. That was also updated, so that was back in September of 2019, but in September of this year, we've had 7.0 reviewed, and you can see that if you look that up. And again, they called out the custom capability that we had as a unique, the fact that we had an extensive list of third-party connectors, and that we could effectively emulate any device across the network to create a trap. So moving on. And finally, in Q1 of this year, there isn't a Gartner Magic Quadrant, but an independent body did analysis of a number of the technologies in the marketplace, and TrapX came out as a leader. And they made some really interesting comments, again, around the number of traps, the fact that we could do that at scale, the fact that we had a very low infrastructure cost, that we had our custom capability, and also our deception net, which is really interesting. And we'll touch on that as part of the attack intelligence that Nathan's going to show you in the demonstration as well. So moving on, I'll hand over to Nathan. I'm sure you're going to be excited to see this live. The proof is always in the pudding, as they say here in the UK, but we're excited to show you this in action.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's Nathan here. I have just one slide to show before we go into the demonstration. This really is just to set the scene in terms of the architecture for Deception Grid. Tony mentioned that we have a quite simple architecture, and indeed, hopefully that will come through in this slide, but also when we go into the live demonstration. There's really two main components for our solution. The first one is at the top of the screen here, you see the Security Operations Console. This is TSOC. TSOC is essentially a management platform. It's the web GUI interface into all parts of the TrapX solution. This is actually deployed as a virtual machine and is available as a template for all of the most popular hypervisor platforms. VMware ESXi is the most popular for us, but we do also support KVM, Hyper-V. We can deploy into AWS and Azure as well. So quite a bit of flexibility here. The TSOC is very straightforward to deploy. From the moment you power it on in your hypervisor and give it an IP address, we're virtually ready to go. So really straightforward. The second part of our solution is in the middle of the screen here is the appliance. And the appliance in most scenarios with our clients would also be a virtual machine, although we do have physical appliances that can be deployed into data centers, so standard rack mount servers for our client data centers. But we also do support a fanless ruggedized appliance which can go into locations such as oil fields and factory floors and that sort of thing. So lots of options are available. Regardless of how you deploy that, they all provide the same function. The appliance's role is to deploy decoys on the network, and these decoys are all built within the appliance system itself, and every appliance can have 512 decoys or traps, and those 512 decoys can exist either in a single network or they can be spread across multiple VLANs, and the appliance itself has the ability to support both scenarios. So it's a very flexible product to distribute your traps or your decoys across your network without increasing the footprint of the network and without requiring any additional hypervisor licensing or indeed any operating system licensing. So what I mean by that is I could, if I wanted to, deploy 500 Windows traps that will respond like a Windows server on the network, but actually they are only emulations. So they don't really exist as a real server, but we respond like we're a SMB file share or an FTP server or an AD controller, that sort of thing. So we can create these emulations. They can be located on the appliance, and each emulation takes less than 5 minutes to actually create from scratch. And I'll show you an example live on our demonstration. What's interesting to say here is the appliance itself can also support non-IT assets. So, of course, we have Windows, Linux, Windows endpoints emulations, but we also have OT devices such as SCADA systems, so PCLs, things you find in a process automation plant, where you have devices that would emulate network gear. So we can have a switching fabric that looks and feels like a real Cisco switch, for example, but of course is completely fake. All of that lives on the appliance. These are what we call the emulations. But to complete our solution, we do have some additional components. And the first one on the left-hand side is what often is called honey tokens or bait or breadcrumbs. Lures, it doesn't really matter what you call it. The objective is the same, and that is to divert attackers away from real employee assets. So this would be laptops and desktops of real users, or indeed real servers. And these are small artifacts that we would deposit onto endpoints. And those endpoints would then allow the attacker to see these small artifacts and divert them to the traps on the appliance. So some simple examples would be we could edit the host file of the local machine and put some IPs and some comments in the host file to indicate that a certain IP address is actually the payroll server. And of course, if anything touches that payroll server, it's actually a trap, and the trap would actually alert the SOC. But we also have more complex breadcrumbs and bait, such as leaving fake credentials on a machine's credential store, or altering some of the browsing history of a machine, or adding some saved sessions into applications like PuTTY. So there are lots of options available for using the bait technology, but it's really important to note here that this is an agentless solution, which means we do not require any software to be running on those machines that are out there in the field. What we do have is a very simple script, which would be delivered as part of the organization's software distribution tool, which would be SCCM, Intune, etc., etc. The other option we also have here on the right-hand side is full OS traps. And full OS traps actually is the only point we require an additional license from the customer. And this would be where we would ask the customer to provide a gold image of their Windows server, Windows endpoint. And once we have that image running on VM, let's say, we then provide an agent, and the agent would be installed on top, and the agent would then essentially provide a forensic seal around this machine, and anything that happens moving forward is reported back into the TSOC. And the reason you might want to do this is perhaps you want to engage with the attacker at a much more deeper level than you would do on an emulation. So you want to gather more intelligence of the techniques and tactics, or you might have a application which is difficult to emulate. So this could be quite a bespoke application, and you want to understand if the application is vulnerable, and if it is, what the attacker is trying to do. So FullOS has got a role to play. All these three things along the bottom is what completes our deception deployment strategy, and that's all inclusive in the subscription. But we also have a very strong ecosystem that lets us plug into some of our friends and family in the security space. So, for example, sandboxing with McAfee or Cisco, all of the SIM vendors plugging in so we can send our alerts into the customers' SOC platforms, and also some remediation tools like network access control from Forescout or from Fortinet, and these sorts of things. So I'll show you some examples of those on the real system as we go in. And the final piece to mention here is every single appliance that we deploy on the network has the ability to also act as a packet sniffing device. And it's a very powerful feature of every appliance. This allows us to notify of any outbound traffic that could be potentially calling home, and we can send an alert to the SOC via the TSOC. So that's the architecture of the solution. What I would do is actually connect into a live platform, and here we have the dashboard of the main TSOC. This is what you would see essentially if you had just deployed our solution and you've just connected onto the URL of the TSOC. So the main dashboard, as you can see, looks quite easy to navigate. In my example, I have a summary of the traps that I have deployed out in the field. And as this is a demonstration box, you can see I've got various different styles of traps, including some familiar ones. So I have some Mac OS, Windows, and some Linux devices. And there may be some unfamiliar ones, such as SAP. I have a Siemens device out there for an OT demonstration. And we also have some specific financial services traps here for Swift and so on. So that's a summary of what's out there. We're going to look at that in a little bit more detail as we go through. At the moment, for today, I'm showing there's been 0 events arrive on my TSOC, but don't worry, we're going to start to attack some of the traps shortly. Here we have a severity level score really, from very low scan events through to much more serious infections, and we'll see this thing light up shortly. This one here with the network intelligence events is actually the packet sniffer we have on the appliance. So if that's plugged into a egress point, it will also record anything that's calling outbound as well. And then really most things on the TSOC are managed under the appliances section over here. And we'll see that we have one appliance in my department called demonstration, which is here. And if I connect to this appliance, you'll see that I have all my traps running on here. And actually, the only real resource we require from the customer is IP addresses. So to create a trap, I need an IP address. And that's really it. And the way that I would do that is I can do a manual wizard, which we'll do for the purposes of this demonstration. I could actually automate this via some asset discovery or third-party inventory. I can plug into systems like a Forescout database or an AD, or I can just scan the network and find out what's out there and then tell you what I'd recommend to deploy as your traps. But I'm going to do the manual version so that you can actually see something. And what I will do is create a trap called Nathan Trap 1. And you can see here I have some IP addresses. I'm just going to take the first one in my list, which is IP address 71. And here is the first piece where I can start to customize what my trap would actually look like. We can come back to these things later on, but I can give this a host name so it fits in with my network structure, so it blends in. And of course, my TSOC in my example is actually connected into an Active Directory server. So I'm actually on the corporate domain, as it were, on here. I walk through my wizard. This is the nice piece of the solution. Actually, you can just choose the type of trap you want to deploy based on a template. So let's suppose if I was in financial services, I could easily deploy a Swift web platform, or I could pretend to be an ATM if I wanted to. I could, in my industrial category, select an SAP server or a SCADA device, and then we'll actually exist in the network, and we would be operating Modbus and DMP3 and so on. So they are very specific to their industry devices here. But if I'm in the medical sector, then really what I would be interested in is are my critical systems, like my CT scanners, under attack? And of course, most of those systems are using embedded XP. And exactly is what that would happen here is we'd deploy a pretend fake CT scanner that looks and feels like the real thing. So there are lots of options here. What I will do quickly is show you a server deployment. And if I click on Windows Server in my example, I can walk through here. And really, this is the point where I can start customizing what this decoy is going to look like. So first of all is the fingerprint of this machine. So am I going to be a old 2003 server that's running a legacy application and still important to my network, but I want to know if that is being targeted from the attacker, or is it a more modern 2012 or 2016 server? I'm going to just do 2012 R2 for this purpose, and we can then determine which services on the network we're going to respond to. Should we be probed, prodded, attacked, etc. So if I just take the default settings, click on Apply, and click on Finish, what we'll see here is if I go on to my next screen, Nathan Trap is now available. So this IP address is now on my network and will respond to anything that's configured on that service. So if you remember, if you were looking at the screen, I had FTP, SMB enabled. What I can do is quickly check that the machine is indeed there. So if I ping it, it responds. So 5 minutes ago, this machine was not there. So if you can imagine what you've just done here, you've deployed a Windows 2012 R2 machine on an IP address with about 5 or 6 different services running on it, and you've not had to lift a single ISO CD or look for any licensing. So that machine has responded to a ping, but of course, as you would expect, something on my dashboard would have probably lit up because that trap has actually been touched. If I click on my today's view, we'll wait for that to arrive. It should arrive here shortly as a scan down here. Let's click on analysis. It might have arrived already. While it's doing that, there it is. Windows, here we go. You can see I have a scan event. This is classed as a low severity. The attacker's IP address is 200, that's my laptop. I've touched the trap called Nathan Trap 1. And the protocols are ping, as you saw I did a ping. And not much detail here because it's just a simple ping, but we recorded that a response was sent to the ping 4 times. So it's a very simple example of a trap that's been touched. Of course, if this was an Nmap scan, there'd be a lot more data here because it'd be much more intensive and we'll be collecting much more information that's relevant to the SOC team. What I can do now is just maybe up that a notch. And here you can see I'm now FTPing to the server. And what I get now is a response saying, this is a Microsoft FTP service. That's the default setting for a Microsoft server when you create an FTP service. And maybe I've scanned this machine and detected that there is no authentication on it, and indeed it lets me in, and I'm now connecting to this FTP server. So quite simple, again, quite simple task that I've executed here. If I go to my, refresh my analysis over here, we can now see this is no longer a scan event, this is actually a connection. So the severity has increased slightly because somebody's actually no longer just saying, hello, are you out there? It's now saying, do you let me connect? And indeed, you can see here that we've captured the attacker coming in over anonymous connection to that trap. And of course, that trap, again, didn't exist a few minutes ago. So you can see how the ease of which I can create something on the network. What I'll do quickly here is actually move into my FTP client, and I do have a trap I built prior to the session just to make it a bit quicker to see. On IP address 81, actually this trap again is a file transfer server on a Windows platform. What I did here from a security defense, so the SOC team, for example, I created some fake data on the trap because, of course, from the attacker's perspective, if I'm doing a reconnaissance on your network, if I find an IP address and I connect to it, and then I discover that the port 21 is available, so FTP, and I connect to FTP, first of all, it's giving me anonymous logon, which is a big signal that that's probably not legitimate. But if I get to that server and there's nothing there, then that could indicate that that might be a decoy on my on that network. So the idea here is the TSOC lets the administrator upload a structure to the decoy. So what I have here is some folders which I've created that fit into my network sort of architecture, let's say. And on this, I've also got some files that I've uploaded, which would be completely false information. So this file here is a partner list.xls, which is quite relevant for this discussion. But of course, inside this list would be completely false information. However, I don't know that as the attacker, but I can go and grab that file. So I bring that down to my local machine, and there it is, it's come down. But what happens if the attacker wants to leave me a little present? And here I can upload a file. You can see this going up at the moment, so that will take a few seconds. This is an executable file, which file name ransomware.exe. It's just loads up, and here it is on my trap. So it's 8 meg. And if I go back to my analysis dashboard, let's see what's been going on while these actual actions have been taking place. Now, the severity is increased. So I've got a high alert here because the attacker is no longer connecting to the trap and just connecting to see if I get a response. She's actually doing something. So you can see here that I have an interaction, same attacker, different trap. This is the one I made earlier. FTPing on port 21. This is currently in progress, which means the FTP client is still connected. If I open up this one, what do I get? So let's see. So first of all, much more information now in my analysis, which the SOC team would see. I can scroll down through this, and you'll see that we're capturing the login event. We're capturing the attacker going into a customer folder, customer data folder, and we can see he retrieved, as in downloaded, a file called partnerlist.xls that's been downloaded to the attacker's machine. So it's essentially a loss of data from your network. As far as the attacker is concerned, I'm getting your crown jewels, but of course, from a defender's perspective, you gave me some fake data. And if I then scroll down, you can see that he also uploaded a file to the trap, and we've recorded that event. Now, we don't just record it and say, okay, we've seen a file name here called ransomware. We do a couple of things here. We grab the MD5 of that file, and we can send that to in our example, we have an integration here with VirusTotal. So we send that to VirusTotal and say, have you seen this hash before? And give me a score against it. And the second thing we do is we also send it to a sandbox. So we can explode that file and give you a result. Now, in the TSOC, we have, as we mentioned before, a very strong ecosystem of partner integrations. Every single customer of the deception solution has the option to use the TrapX sandbox, which is actually a McAfee sandbox, and it's in our cloud. And this option just has to be turned on here. What will happen is the ransomware.exe in this example would be captured and sent securely to the sandbox, exploded, and then a report would be given down to the TSOC once it's finished. So in my analysis section, I have a tab here for forensics, and the forensics is where you'd look at the process of the file being uploaded and so on. So you capture the file and the hash, and you can download the analysis reports when they've finished. They take a little time because they're being live, blown up into the sandbox in the cloud. But if you notice on that ecosystem, we also have the VirusTotal here, which is essentially an API key into the VirusTotal cloud. Those are free to create. That will also give you additional detection information into the TSOC. You saw that the sandbox has other options here, so I can also use my customer preferred sandbox. And if the sandbox the customer has is not here, then we also have the API, which allows us to use third-party solutions. One of the biggest functions of our ecosystem, aside from obviously doing the SIM integration, which is very straightforward with syslog, and on syslog you can determine what events you want to send over, so they can be the highest events only or all events. We do have a integration here which enables us to, if we detect a threat on an endpoint, and it could be we've detected ransomware, for example, we can actually initiate, in example here, a Forescout API call, and we can connect into the Forescout counteract platform in this example and say, okay, we've got an infection going on, let's divert or at least notify Forescout, and then Forescout can then either do the remediation, move that machine into a different VLAN, quarantine VLAN, and so on. So we do play a role in the remediation stage. So you've seen how quick and easy it is to create the traps. We don't just have the straightforward IT services, as it were. We have the ability to do some weird and wonderful things. I will just do a very, very quick trap here, IP address 72, and I'm just going to choose a networking device in my example and choose a Cisco switch, quite a common platform out there. I'm going to enable the web managed option, which means I can connect into the Cisco GUI on that switch, and in literally less than 5 minutes here, I will have access to a decoy on my network, which will be on my second page here, IP address 72. And if I grab that, pop up here, pop the IP address, now I get a prompt to log in. Let's try Cisco and Cisco. I'm now looking at a Cisco GUI front end of a Catalyst switch. Again, wasn't deployed previously, and if I'm an attacker, I've done a scan on your network and found some responses to what looked to be a Cisco protocols. I then connect under my GUI here. I can see that I can browse around this device like it's a real switch. I can change things, turn things on, turn things off. But what I really want from an attacker's perspective is to get root into the shell. So let's try that and remove those. And I can connect into the shell, and now I'm in a Cisco switch, and I can go into enable mode and start doing my attack on that switch. But of course, it's all a complete waste of time, because the more I get spent burning my time on that, it doesn't really matter, because of course what the SOC are aware of is there's a interaction going on right now on SSH on a trap, and you can see that I came in using username Cisco, default password, and I opened a shell and I went to enable mode, and I'm about to do my damage on that machine, but of course it's all in a fake device. So again, this is very, very simple to do. I've not had to go to any networking teams. I've just had to get an IP address and deploy that trap on that machine. And very quickly, I'm just going to very quickly flip into a Windows 10 machine here. And this Windows 10 machine is to be viewed as a real employee's machine that is currently running some breadcrumbs. So the idea here is if this machine was compromised, there are things on this machine which will divert the attacker to traps, so you can be identified that there's a problem on the network. Now, as I mentioned, there are some simple things we do. Again, this is all agentless. I can edit the host file of this machine. Most normal users probably wouldn't know how to get to it. I've just created a shortcut to it to make it easy. But you can see here there are IP addresses in the host file which have been added by the TSOC. Again, this is agentless, so I've added links to a domain controller, a Ansible server, a Swift front end, a Lexmark printer, an SAP server. These are all trapped on my appliance. Those are all traps. So there's the first part of my reconnaissance on this machine. This machine's got access to some IPs that could be interesting. Let me understand what the browser knows. So if I go to my browser, I can see there are some bookmarks here, and there's one for Employee Portal, Swift Admin, and SAP GUI. Let me just click on one of those. This is taking me to a Swift front end, and this IP address is a trap. This is a trap that's running on the appliance. And so that's interesting information there. What else can I find in here? Well, I've got a file that's hidden here. There's a spreadsheet that's hidden. It's called Really Secret Stuff. So I could open that file. Let's give that a go. Okay, Really Secret Stuff. There's loads of information, customer data here. So this is actually what we call a deceptive file. This is how we enhance DLP. This file that I just opened is going to ping a trap and say I've been opened. This file will ping a trap even if it's taken off the network. So you could hide this file somewhere quite discreet, and if it gets moved, opened on network, off network, it would call home and say I've been opened. It's quite nice. I mentioned that we do mess around with the credential store, and in my example here, these credentials are having inserted by TSOC on this endpoint to convince somebody that I could actually go to a terminal server on this IP address and we would respond to them. These are all fake credentials. They don't work, but they will be logged on the system, and you can also get your SIM to track those. So lots of things we do. There's much more we can do, and as you know, we don't have the time to show all of those things. But just before we go back to the slides, I'm just going to run a couple of attacks from my attack server over here. This is my Kali attack server. What I want to do first is potentially run a vulnerability on. No, sorry, run a. I want to check if your AD is vulnerable. So what I'm doing is I'm making an LDAP request on the network to an IP address that's responded to me that I've already identified as being an LDAP server. This is a trap. This is not a real server. So it's recorded the LDAP as being available in this example. Another one I might do is run a eternal blue type thing, like a vulnerability scan on a trap or on an IP address to make sure it's vulnerable. Here, I got a response saying this IP address is vulnerable, which is interesting. And or you might also have in the background something like a responder attack on the network. So one of the things that we do is we generate fake traffic from traps to make the traps look real. So this responder is waiting on the network to poison traffic, what it believes is real traffic, but is completely fake. And what our traps will do is actually feed it some fake data to give the impression that we are vulnerable and we have some important information to share with you. So those things have been running, and of course we had a lot of things going on the Windows 10 machine. So our dashboard should have captured a lot more stuff. So you can see now, the one at the top is quite severe in infection, and that's infection under SMB. So what's happened is that attack from that Kali machine has been running, and you can see here I've got a eternal blue alert that something's trying to see whether we are exploitable using eternal blue, and you can see here they're trying to connect under the username guest on the domain Wiccan, and all of this is part of the deception campaign. So I'm going to stop there from the demo, and I'm just going to flip back into the final parts of the slide before we go into the Q&A. So back over to Tony.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nathan. Really detailed presentation, and just shows how comprehensive the deception solution from TrapX is. What I did want to just finish off only in a couple of minutes, because we want to give 10 minutes for questions, is we're continually developing the product here at TrapX, and we're super excited. Very recently, we just launched our first in the industry, which is deception as a service. What we wanted to introduce is, which you'll see on the next slide, a remote service for home workers and employees working from home. Nathan, if we can just move to the next slide and build that out. Essentially, what we have, and I'll talk you through this very quickly, we have a hosted service in AWS, so that we can deploy at scale quickly and make it very cost effective for customers to join, and also to trial the service, by the way. So you could take a number of these and share these with your customers so that they could test this for remote workers. But essentially what we're doing is the deceptive token that Nathan talked about is being deployed to an endpoint. It's being deployed remotely using Intune or SCCM or GPO or associated tools. And it is effectively looking for three things: an attacker who's potentially coming in via a VPN, an attacker who is looking for files, password, confidential, intellectual property files that would be hidden on that remote laptop, or thirdly, someone who might be looking at accessing the intranet. So we're creating those decoys on the endpoint for the attacker to attempt to interact with, and obviously immediately create that high fidelity alert. And in essence, that's the service, and it can be up and running in minutes, and you control that. So it's one component of the overall deception grid, but we're offering that as a service and a first to market. So again, love to send you some more details on that following this session. We've also done 2 recordings, one of Nathan's session for the overall deception grid to get you familiar with it, and a quick overview of Flex as well for your review after this session. Hopefully we've shown you in what is a very short window, certainly 25 minutes on Nathan's session, we can show a customer, and in fact, how easy it was to demonstrate. It really is that easy to have a customer up and running, which makes us probably one of the most cost-effective solutions in the marketplace for deception, with probably the most comprehensive solution. So hopefully you'll take us up on the option, getting some customers on board and trialing the solution and taking advantage of the commercial offer as well. Thank you everyone for your time today.
Thanks a lot, Tony and Nathan. Thank you guys for the session. If you guys, Tony, if you could just look into your chat window, there are a couple of questions that have come across. It would be great if you get to answer them.
Yeah, fantastic. How is TrapX against our competitive solution? Well, I think in a few minutes we probably wouldn't do it justice against the likes of Ativo. I never like to undermine our deceptive competitive solutions, but I think there are a number of core differences. That certainly from the commercial standpoint, we're stronger. And that has to do with a number of things that Nathan talked about, the way it's licensed, the ease of deployment, the simplicity of the solution, the emulations. Obviously, we own the patents for the emulations and the fact that we can do custom patents. So, for example, if you take sensitive areas where it might be financial services environments, where they won't deploy cyber technology solutions because either it's a legacy environment, they don't want a technology touching that environment because it could impact in the operation. We've seen that in manufacturing and just in time. We effectively can deploy because of the agentless solution, and that makes us unique and different to our competition. So that's certainly one differential. But if anyone would like a more detailed discussion one-on-one, obviously I'd love to be able to share that, so happy to do that as well. Okay, next one on the list, references in the UAE. Yeah, certainly we have references. Obviously how we operate, we're under NDA. So if we engage with you as reseller, what we'll do, we'll get that all finalized. And yeah, we can share some of the references that we have in region, be happy to. And I know some of those customers would also be happy to speak to you as well. So no problems there. Can we have a soft copy of the slides? Absolutely, we'll share that after the event. Yeah, we'd love you to fill in the feedback form. Licensing model. Okay, yeah, sure. So the beauty of TrapX is it's licensed very easily in terms of the number of VLANs. The price per VLAN is public, and then you have your discount, and I'll share that as part of this presentation. Effectively, you have unlimited use of the product. So some of the competition has modules. We incorporate everything in as part of the pricing, and then you just license the number of VLANs to the customer requirements. So if there is a challenge from a budgeting perspective, the beauty is we can fit within that. It just means that we incorporate the number of VLANs to give them the coverage that they need. So again, we've got flexibility there.
Thanks so much, Tony. Definitely what I'll do is, as a part, I think I will just speak with the partners that have come on to the session, and definitely if there are any questions, I will redirect them to you. And of course, we'll start moving. I'll speak to the partners who have come for our session today, and we can take things forward from there.
Wonderful. Well, good. Thank you everyone this afternoon for your time. We really appreciate it. We look forward to working with you. I think we'll support you successfully in winning some business together. Ashik and everyone from Bulwark, thank you very much for hosting this, and we hope you have an enjoyable afternoon and week ahead.